My husband caught me cheating with the horse, a real story of infidelity and forbidden love. Emily stood at the edge of the horse corral, the familiar autumn breeze ruffling her hair and pulling her thoughts in all directions. It was a sanctuary of whispers, her escape from a life that had grown tedious and suffocating. The distant whinnies of the horses and the soft thud of hooves on the earth were music to her ears. But that day, it felt as if the very air carried a heaviness, a premonition looming on the horizon. As she approached Charlie, her chestnut gelding, a familiar sense of euphoria surged through her. He greeted her with a gentle nuzzle, and their bond, forged through countless rides, blossomed anew. Together, they had shared everything, her dreams, her fears, and most importantly, the unspoken truths gnawing at her heart. But behind that connection lay a darkness, a secret she could only share with him. With each gallop across the sprawling fields, Emily reveled in the freedom that eluded her in her marriage to Mark. They had met in college, swept up in the whirlwind romance that had promised adventures and dreams. But somewhere along the way, the excitement faded into the monotony of shared bills and stagnant conversation, leaving her feeling more like a stranger in her own home. Weeks turned into months, and guilt began to weave itself into the tapestry of her love for Charlie. The time spent with him was exhilarating, often more so than with Mark, and each whisper shared with her horse felt like an act of defiance. The nights grew longer, filled with stolen moments and the soft clinking of tack as she prepared for rides under the stars. Riding Charlie offered her solace. It was a dangerous addiction. "Do you think they'll ever understand?" she would often ask Charlie, brushing her fingers through his mane. And in those moments, he was her only confidant, the only one who didn't question her about where she disappeared for hours on end. The tension reached its breaking point one Saturday afternoon, as Mark decided to accompany Emily to the stables. He had grown suspicious of her late-night excursions, dismissing her reassurances that horseback riding was simply a hobby. Yet, the last shred of trust had been lost the moment she failed to defend her secret. "Let's see what you do with this horse of yours," Mark challenged, sarcasm punctuating his words as they approached the barn. But Emily could see the hurt beneath his bravado. It turned her stomach, knowing that underneath his jabs lay genuine love, a love she was distorting with her obsession. Jake, the stable's trainer, greeted them warmly, instantly commanding Mark's suspicion. Emily's heart raced. She could feel Charlie's warmth beneath her palms, but dread gnawed at her as she led Jake and Mark towards the paddock. Emily's carefully constructed facade wavered as she climbed onto Charlie's back, her heart pounding louder than the hoofbeats. "Show me what you've got," Mark said, arms crossed and jaw clenched, but he couldn't mask the hurt radiating from his eyes. With a gentle nudge, she urged Charlie into a gallop. As they raced across the field, the world around her started to blur. Ecstasy coursed through her veins, but when she glanced back at Mark, she saw a figure cast in shadows, standing alone in the fading light. In that instant, the thrill collided with guilt, leaving a sharp sting. But the fleeting moment of joy began to spiral when Charlie stumbled unexpectedly, throwing Emily forward. Adrenaline surged as she fought to regain control, only to feel the weightlessness of falling. For a terrifying second, time stopped, and all she could think was that the world around her was unraveling. She hit the ground hard, pain flaring through her arm. "Emily!" Mark cried, and the rawness in his voice sliced through her. Panic propelled him forward, and as he reached her crumpled form, all that tension between them snapped like a taut string. She looked up at him, fear swirling in her eyes. "I'm okay," she gasped, but her body betrayed her, agony radiating from her wrist as she willed herself to sit up. He knelt beside her, his earlier bravado stripped away, replaced by concern. "What just happened? Why wasn't I in the loop? Why didn't you tell me the truth?" Her heart ached as the walls she had built cracked, threatening to crumble entirely. "I thought you wouldn't understand," she confessed, her voice trembling. "I didn't want this to come between us." Mark's face twisted in anguish. "You didn't realize it already has? You're spending more time with that horse than you do with me. Who are you anymore?" Before she could answer, A distant hoofbeat echoed in her heart, haunting her with a weighty reminder of where her true affections lay. And in that moment, she understood that her infatuation had woven a great divide in their marriage, one that couldn't be easily bridged. Jake stepped forward cautiously. "Maybe you should see a doctor." He offered a hand to help Emily up, but Mark's expression went dark, jealousy flaring in his eyes. "Stay out of this, Jake," Mark warned, his voice laced with deep anger. He turned to Emily, desperation etched across his brow. "I need to know if you still love me." The question hung heavy in the air, like a thunderstorm waiting to break. Emily hesitated, unsure of how to answer. How could she express the inexplicable truth, the love she felt for Charlie, the freedom he represented, without breaking Mark's heart further? And then, in that quiet moment, a flicker of understanding dawned on her. "Love can take many forms, Mark. I don't know what I want anymore. It feels wrong to deny that I share something special with Charlie. But I love you too." The words spilled from her lips like a dam breaking, but Mark's expression twisted in pain. "Then why do you keep running away?" he asked, the hurt making it impossible to disguise. His words hit her like a revelation. She realized that this wasn't just about infidelity. It was about the paths they had taken. Her heart had gravitated towards something that symbolized the freedom she craved, while Mark had become a representation of everything she felt trapped in. Over the following days, Emily's injury served as a catalyst for a brutal confrontation. As her arm healed, so did the fractures in their marriage, revealing greater cracks in their foundation. They held intense discussions that spiraled into arguments, emotional wounds laid bare. Mark's pain morphed into resentment, and Emily's guilt turned into despair. Each time she returned to Charlie, a part of her felt like she was abandoning Mark entirely. One chilly morning, Emily stood outside the stables, staring out at the landscape that had once been her solace. Charlie ambled over, sensing her turmoil. She ran her hand over his warm coat, desperately clinging to the comfort he provided. She felt the stirring of her heart, not just toward her horse, but also toward the life she once wanted with Mark. "I can't do this," she whispered to Charlie. "I can't keep pretending." But a fateful phone call shattered the fragile peace of her contemplation. As the phone rang, she saw Mark's number flashing on the screen. Her heart skipped, a mixture of hope and dread coursing through her. With shaking hands, she answered. "Emily, I can't keep doing this," he said, his voice cracking. "I'm sorry. I love you, but I can't be with someone who loves a horse more than me." Panic surged through her, a suffocating fear swallowing her heart whole. "Mark, please don't say that. I can change. I want to change." But she could hear the finality in his voice. "I can't be the man you want me to be. I can't compete with a horse." The words cut through her, each syllable ringing with agony. In a desperate bid to hang on, she pleaded, "Mark, wait. I need time to figure this out." But the line went dead, leaving her alone in the stillness of her heartache, feeling the weight of her choices crash down on her soul. In the weeks that followed, Emily found herself torn between two lives, the husband who wanted her back and the horse who had captured her heart. The stables felt emptier without Mark by her side, and yet Charlie's presence was a constant reminder of the freedom Emily craved. Mark's absence echoed through their home, a muted reminder of the love they had once shared. The silence was deafening, filled with unresolved feelings. Days turned into weeks, and in her search for clarity, she reevaluated what she truly wanted. But every time she rode Charlie, freedom enveloped her, wrapping around her heart like a warm embrace, awakening a fire that couldn't be extinguished. Finally, the decisive moment arrived when Emily had to confront the reality of her choices. She decided to have one last conversation with Mark. Standing in front of their home, the walls now painted with the memories of laughter, love, and arguments, she took a deep breath, her heart pounding. The moment was now or never. "Mark," she called, her voice barely above a whisper. Mark emerged, his eyes reflecting the mix of hope and uncertainty. "What do you want, Emily's?" "I want to understand," she replied, meeting his gaze. I need to know if it's possible to reconcile the different loves in my life. Can there be room for both? His face twisted with frustration. How can you love two things at once? It's impossible. It was a question she had grappled with for what felt like an eternity. For so long, she had compartmentalized her feelings, one while writing, the other while at home. But now, the walls she had built began to collapse. I know it seems impossible, but maybe the love we had means something different than what I thought. Mark took a step back, his shoulders sagging under the weight of her words. I don't know if I can trust you, to be honest. You've hidden these feelings for so long. I'm telling you now, she pleaded. I want to be honest. Charlie represents a part of me, my freedom. But that doesn't negate the love I feel for you. I want to find a way for these loves to coexist. His brow furrowed, uncertainty wrestling with hurt. But how will I ever know you're not just writing this out? Tears streamed down Emily's face, and she felt more exposed than ever. I can't promise it'll be easy. I can't erase the past, but I'm here, standing before you, open and vulnerable. The rawness of their emotions hung in the air, a tangled knot of heartache, longing, and hope. But just as the light of possibility began to seep through the cracks, the world around them shifted. Their fragile moment was shattered as a loud neigh echoed from the stables, startling them both. Charlie stood at the fence, looking intently in their direction, as if sensing the emotional whirlwind. Mark turned to look at the horse and back at Emily, his expression contorted in turmoil, his resolve softening just for a second. I don't know if I can share you, Emily. Not with him. Emily's heart sank, realization dawning upon her. The divide between her two worlds wasn't just about her feelings, it was about Mark's expectations of love and loyalty. As she turned back towards the stables one last time, a sense of clarity washed over her. I can't choose one over the other. I love you both, but I can't be the wife you want without losing a part of myself in the process. With that, she took a step back, heart heavy and determined. The decision was made. The truth cut deeper than any blade ever could, and in that heartbreaking moment, she felt as though she was ripping herself apart. Mark's voice cracked as he took a step toward her. Then let's try to understand each other, but know that this is going to take some time. Yet even as he spoke, Emily's heart thudded painfully in her chest. There was no easy resolution, no fairy tale ending, just the weight of what they had shared, interwoven with the understanding that love was not a one-size-fits-all emotion. As she walked away from the house that had once been a refuge, she cast one last glance at Mark. He stood at the threshold, a figure of longing and loss. The tears that streamed down her face mirrored the love that bound them together and the pain of what had been left behind. Back at the stables, Charlie neighed softly as she approached, his presence a calming balm. She drew in a shaky breath, knowing that her path forward would not be erected on easy choices or tidy resolutions. Tearfully, she wrapped her arms around Charlie's neck. I'm scared, buddy, she whispered against his warm coat. Charlie nuzzled her, as if reassuring her that whatever lay ahead, she wouldn't have to face it alone. In that tender moment, Emily found solace in her truth. Love was complicated, sometimes messy, often painful, but it was also transformative. As she rode into the sunset, feeling the wind rush against her, she embraced the uncertainty of the journey ahead, knowing that she was finally being true to herself. With each gallop, she felt a mixture of heartbreak and liberation, an emotional tapestry of loss and newfound strength. Uncertainty loomed large, but for the first time in a long time, she was ready to carve her own path, guided by the loves that walked beside her, even if they seemed forever at odds. Emily knew the road ahead would be tumultuous, fraught with challenges, but she was willing to embrace that journey head-on, ready to navigate the complexities of love, both human and equine, and find her way back to the person she was always meant to be.